I love the Pokémon Delcatty, but anyone that has ever tried to use one would know they are unbelievably weak. They are garbage, straight cheeks, a waste of a team slot, a complete and utter failure of a Pokémon. Delcatty is so pathetically weak that even after they gave it a stat buff in Gen 7, it was still weaker than Pokémon like Plusle, Minun, Pachirisu, Wormadam, and every middle stage starter Pokémon. So, what if we try to beat a game only using Pokémon that match or are below Delcatty's base stat total? We would be using Delcatty's post-buffed stats as the cutoff point, because if we didn't, we'd be locked out of using some really heavy hitters, like Beautifly or Wailmer. Anyways, I'm Hextasy, and today we're going to be playing through a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Ruby, only using Pokemon as bad as Delcatty. First things first, we need to pick our starter. We won't be able to evolve any of them, but the choice still matters. Watson will probably be quite the wall, so we'll take Trico and name them Boyd. Boyd is easily able to beat May's Torchic and get a nice amount of experience. May then gives us some Pokeballs, and we can go catch some Pokemon who almost certainly will have evolutions we can't use. First up is Route 103, where we find Aegon the Zigzagoon, and then Route 102, where we catch Belclair the Seedot. We head through Petalburg City, meet up with our dad, who makes us sit through a tutorial on how to catch Pokemon, despite us already having caught two. As much as I rag on Sword and Shield, I think it's cool that those games will skip the tutorial if you've already caught Pokemon before reaching it. Once that's over, we head to Route 104, where we catch Beatrice the Wurmple, and we decide to train against some of the trainers here before going into the woods, but we make the mistake of challenging youngster Billy. Things are going fine at first, but then this kid busts out a level 8 Tailo that wipes out more than half of Boyd's HP in a single attack. Belclair and Beatrice obviously won't do well against them, so Aegon is our only hope. Aegon proceeds to miss their first tackle, and only manages to bring Tailo down to about a fourth of their HP before they get hit by a quick attack and become the first death of the run. And honestly, we probably wipe here. We send Boyd back in, but Tailo just uses Growl twice in a row, letting us take them out. Well, we know trainers are dangerous now, so let's just train up against some wild Pokemon. We manage to evolve Beatrice, who randomly evolves into one of two Cocoon Pokemon, and Beatrice becomes a Silcoon. Shortly after, we watch Belclair die to a critical hit from a wild Zigzagoon. Okay, I guess nowhere is safe. We eventually get Beatrice to level 10, where they evolve into a Beautifly, and we head into the Petalburg Woods. We have a decent chance of getting a Shroomish here, who we can't evolve, but will at least be good for setting up status effects. Nope, we get Goddard the Slackhoth, probably the worst thing we could have gotten. We also have our first encounter with Team Magma here in the forest, and once we're out, we can head past Rustboro City to Route 116, where our first encounter is the exact Pokemon we were looking for, a Skitty named Lucatile. With them caught, it's time to take on our first gym leader, Roxanne. Her Geodude easily goes down to Boyd's Absorb, and then her ace Pokemon, Nosepass, comes in. We move first, landing an Absorb for decent damage, and we're hit hard by a Rock Tomb that drops our speed, but Boyd is still faster and restores a bit of HP with an Absorb before being hit by another Rock Tomb. Our Oranberry heals us, and Roxanne uses a potion to heal while we use another Absorb. Nosepass is faster than us now, and begins to start using Rock Throws and Tackles, and the slugfest ends with Nosepass with barely any visible HP and Boyd in range to be KO'd. Our best bet is to use Quick Attack, but it isn't enough and Boyd gets killed by a rock throw. Beatrice comes in and finishes the job with an Absorb to win us the fight. After burying Boyd, we can head to the Rust Turf Tunnel where we catch Mildred the Whismer, and we have our second encounter with Team Magma. We beat them to rescue an old man's Wingull, and he agrees to ferry us to Dewford Town. Once there, we talk to this fisherman to get the old rod, and we fish up Hazel the Tentacool. We then begin searching around the town for a Pokemart so we can buy a Repel, but it doesn't have one, so we have to sail all the way back to the mainland to buy them at Petalburg City before sailing all the way back. We do this because in the Granite Cave, we can find a bunch of Pokemon that we can't evolve, Abra, who will almost certainly fail to catch, and Mawile. To give us the best chances to catch Mawile, we use the Repel to get to the bottom floor, and by having a Pokemon at level 12 at the front of our party, we should have a 1 in 3 chance to get a Mawile. But we end up getting an Aaron named Tarkus. All that effort for nothing. Before we leave the island, we'll be taking on the second gym leader, Brawly. We start with Beatrice, who heavily resists all of his Pokemon's moves, and we can easily win by spamming the A button to repeatedly use Gust. We then sail to Slightport City, where just north of the city at Route 110, we catch Hodrick the Oddish, and after evolving Mildred into Loudred, who only has a base stat total of 360, we can clear Team Magma out of Slightport City. Afterwards is our second May fight, and I'm beginning to think choosing Trico as our starter was a mistake. Her Combuskin is looking pretty deadly to most of our current team, but let's get into the fight. She starts with a Wailmer, while we start with Hodrick, and May just decides to have it spam Splash for some reason. We put it to sleep and try to land some Absorbs, but May swaps out for Combuskin on an Absorb that hardly hurts them. We swap to Hazel as Combuskin uses Focus Energy, and without any Water-type moves, we have to start throwing out Acids. Thanks to our Oran Berry, we're able to survive an extra attack and are able to come out on top. The sleeping Wailmer comes back in, so we swap to Hodrick, who takes them out with a couple Absorbs, and all May has left is Shroomish. We land a Poison Powder, and they hit us with a Stun Spore before we swap to Beatrice to finish them with a Gust to win the fight. We're able to continue on up to Mauville City, where we have our first Wally fight. I'm something of a gambling man, and send out Lucatiel to spam Assist, a move that will use a random move from another Pokemon in your party, and we get Absorb, Howl, and a Mist Sleep Powder. I decide to stop messing around and take out Ralts with a couple tackles to win the fight, but we're not done gambling and we hit up the game corner to get enough coins to buy some powerful TMs. Heading west, we catch Henriette the Illumise on Route 117, and we begin EV training in the Rust Turf Tunnel, trying to rack up some HP EVs for the next gym. While training, we evolve Hodrick into my favorite Pokemon, Gloom, and it's time to take on the third gym leader, Watson. Watson starts with his Magnemite, while we start with Mildred, who is outsped and hit by a Sonic Boom for 20 damage before we land a one-hit KO Flamethrower. Voltorb is out next, and we swap to Tarkus in case they use Self-Destruct, but instead they use Spark for decent damage. And then they use Self-Destruct for a whole 7 damage. All that's left is his Ace Magneton, and we try to swap out to Hodrick, but Magneton has the Magnet Pole ability, and we can't swap out our Steel-type Aeron. So we have to watch them die to a Shockwave, and we send out Hodrick next. They're hit by a Sonic Boom before putting Magneton to sleep with a Sleep Powder, and we then swap to Mildred while Magneton snoozes. Unfortunately, Magneton wakes up at the earliest opportunity and lands a sonic boom before we hit them with a flamethrower. Watson heals, another flamethrower brings them to the yellow, and they then land a shockwave to kill Mildred. We might be in trouble, nothing else can really hurt them. We send out Lucatiel, hoping they can pull flamethrower with an assist, but after surviving a shockwave, their assist turns into psychic. We swap to Hodrick as they heal again, and they confuse us with a supersonic, causing Hodrick to hit themselves. We survive a sonic boom before missing a sleep powder and going down on the next turn. Lucatiel dies and Beatrice is out, landing a stun spore before being annihilated by a shockwave. All we have left is Hazel the Tentacool, and they are not very effective Ice Beam. Magneton breaks through paralysis to land a Thunder Wave to paralyze us, and against all odds, Hazel begins to rack up some damage, survives a shockwave, and then dies. Well, that's our first reset. On to the next attempt, and this time we'll be taking Alfred the Mudkip as our starter. They have no trouble beating May, and we can start catching Pokémon. Route 103 has Aegon the Zigzagoon, Route 102 has Cirrus the Poochyena, 104 has Leroy the Wingull, Petalburg Woods once again decides to give us the 5% encounter chance Goddard the Slackoth, fantastic. And finally, we hit up Route 116 where we begin searching for a Skitty. Despite other viable encounters being here, I figure we should have a Skitty for the run based off its own sheer incompetence. And Route 116 is the only route it's found on. Unfortunately, Route 116 is also the only route Nincada can be found on, and one of their evolutions, Shedinja, only has a base stat total of 236. That's less than even Skitty. Speaking of, we still haven't found a Skitty, and I'm starting to believe that they're like a mini Crown Balahara. They don't exist. Luckily, despite Route 116 being the only route Skitty can be caught on, it's not the only place we can get Skitty. In Fortree City, after the 5th gym, we can trade for a Skitty. So if Watson continues to give us trouble and we reset again, I'll get the Fortree City Skitty and then just cheese him with a Shedinja. After over an hour of in-game time, we find Lucatiel the Skitty, and we can take on the first gym. Alfred is able to one-shot Roxanne's Geodude with a water gun, and then lands Mud Slaps against her Nosepass until it is legally blind and can't hit anything. A couple of water guns after that takes them out to win us the fight, and we can then head to the Rust Turf Tunnel to get Mildred the Whismer, then to Dewford Town to fish up Hazel the Tentacool. We remembered our repels this time and head into the Granite Cave hoping for a Mawile, but get another Tarkus the Aeron. We then have our second gym battle, but without a Beautifly, we might need to put in more effort than spamming A into it. We send out Leroy the Wingull to take on his Machop. Our first wing attack takes out over half their HP, and they use Bulk Up to increase their attack and defense. This lets them survive a second wing attack with barely any HP, and land a Karate Chop that does surprisingly a good amount of damage. Brawly heals and is able to land another Karate Chop before we bring them back into the red. They heal again, and we once again bring them into the red, but then Leroy is killed by a Karate Chop. Major bruh moment, our bird just lost to the fighting type gym leader. And not even their ace Pokemon, they couldn't even take out Machop. We bring out Alfred to finish the job with a water gun, and we hit Makuhita with a couple water guns and Mud Slaps before switching to Hazel, who finishes them with a Poison Sting to win us the fight. We head to Slateport, deal with Team Magma, and north of the city at Route 110, our new encounter is Felicia the Electrike. After evolving Mildred into a Loudred, we take on May, and with her having Grovyle instead of Combuskin, this should be easier. Aegon takes out her Wailmer with a few headbutts. Nemala's in next, so we switch to Alfred, who takes them out with a water gun. And for her Grovyle, Hazel's Acid is much more effective, and gets the defense drop, so a second one takes them out to win the fight. We make it to Mauville, destroy Wally, go gambling, and hit up Route 116 where we catch Lautrec the Roselia. We're back at Watson now, and we start with Tarkus against his Magnemite. We are paralyzed by a Thunder Wave, but then land a Mud Slap, lowering Magnemite's accuracy, but not by enough for us to avoid the incoming Sonic Boom. A second Mud Slap brings them low, and Watson heals, only to get hit by another Mud Slap. Magnemite is missing moves now, and we force them to heal again, then take them out. Voltorb is in, and lands a Sonic Boom before Paralysis stops us from moving. Our Oranberry heals us up enough to survive a Spark with 4 HP, but we're still unable to move, so it's time to switch out. We send in Felicia, who's hit by a Spark, and gets immediately paralyzed. Super. We get off a Quick Attack, and then Voltorb uses Self-Destruct, killing Felicia. Well, on the bright side, we get a free switch into Lautrec for his Magneton. They hit us with a Thunder Wave, which is instantly cured by our Cherry Berry, and we respond with a Stun Spore, paralyzing them in turn. We hit them with a Leech Seed and get hit by a second Thunder Wave, which is actually the best case scenario here. Because it guarantees they won't use Thunder Wave when we switch to Mildred, who can land a Flamethrower for big damage before being paralyzed, but they also had a Cherry Berry to cure Paralysis, and one more Flamethrower wins us the fight. Now that we can use the Rock Smash HM, we head north to Route 112 where we find Ellie the Nummel, head through the Fiery Path and catch Fiva the Coughing, watch Mildred almost die to a crit, and catch Henri the Spinda at Route 113. Heading past Fall Arbor Town, we can grab the Dig TM, which we'll need for the 5th Gym Leader, and then find a new Belclair the Seedaw at Route 114. Entering Meteor Falls, we catch Henrique the Zubat, and watch Team Magma mug some dude, but that's none of my business. We pick up a Moonstone while we're here, finally allowing us to evolve Lucatile into a Delcatty. Normally at this point, I head back up through Fall Arbor and around to the Fiery Path to reach Mount Chimney, but for the first time ever, it has occurred to me I can just hop down here to Rustboro City and go through the Rust Turf Tunnel, making it to the cable car so much faster, and I don't know why I've never thought to do that before. At the top of Mount Chimney, we have to take on Team Magma's leader, Maxie. He starts with a Mightyena, and we start with Mildred. Mightyena keeps kicking Sound in Loudred's face, and while we are able to bring them low enough for them to heal with some flamethrowers, we start to miss everything and have to swap out. We send in Tarkus, who lands a couple Rock Tombs to drop Mightyena's speed, before we have to swap them out, and we bring Mildred back in. She's faster than Mightyena now, and takes them out with a couple flamethrowers, and Golbat comes in, which is ideal for us since our Ice Beam should do big damage, but what's not ideal is how much damage their Wing Attack does, so we have to swap out, and we bust out Tarkus to take them out with a Rock Tomb. All Maxie has left is Camerupt, and we swap to Alfred on an Ember that doesn't hurt them much. Water Gun does solid damage, and they use Tackle, leaving us with plenty HP, and one more Water Gun takes them out to win the fight. Heading down the jagged path, we nab Lori the Spoink and arrive at Lava Rage Town. In the gym, we have the most needlessly intense battle with the Kecleon trainer, but make it to Flannery with no casualties and begin the fight. She starts with a Slugma, and we start with Hazel. We use Bubble Beam, just missing the KO, and they use Light Screen, which will cut the damage of our special moves in half for a few turns, but we're okay with this. Our lower damage causes Flannery to use up a Hyper Potion early, and we take out the first Slugma without taking any damage. The second Slugma lands a Rock Slide before going down, and her ace Torkoal comes in. We swap to Tarkus to eat a Body Slam, barely taking any damage, and then we bring in Alfred on an Overheat, which misses. Honestly, not the best since we wanted Torkoal to drop their special attack here, but we'll be fine. We land a couple Mud Slaps before we get paralyzed by a Body Slam and have to swap out to Tarkus. Knowing they'll go for an Overheat, we swap to Aegon, who's killed by said Overheat. But Torkoal's special attack drops, and we can bring someone in without worrying about them being hit. We bring Tarkus back in now that they aren't as threatened by Overheat, and we land a Rock Tomb for decent damage before Torkoal tries to seduce Tarkus. Not wanting Tarkus to fall for the Tortoise's vile temptations, we swap to Hazel on a Flail, causing them to lose a little less than half their remaining HP, and they then land a Bubble Beam for the KO, earning us the 4th gym badge. Leaving the gym, we bump into May, who gives us the goggles, letting us go into the desert on Route 111, where we catch O'Hara the Trapinch, and grab the root fossil, which we can immediately revive into Gale the Laleep. The 5th gym leader is up next, and we need to prepare. We try looking for a PP up to give to Tarkus since Dig only has 10 PP, and we'll need as many uses as possible, but it turns out there are none available until after this gym. So, unable to get our PP up, we just have to take on the 5th gym leader Norman. He starts with his first slacking, and we start with Tarkus. We get hit by a yawn and use Metal Claw for little damage, and we then swap out to Lautrec while slacking can't move thanks to their ability. We swap between Lautrec and Tarkus, looking for a good opening for Lautrec to land a Stun Spore or Leech Seed, and finally we find one. Sending Lautrec in on a yawn, slacking can't move, and we use Leech Seed, and we miss. We send Gale in on a Facade, which they resist, and begin using Acid, fishing for a defense drop, and after landing 6 Acids, we don't get a single one. Gale is brought to just 7 HP, and we swap to Tarkus as Norman heals slacking, erasing all the progress we made. After getting hit by a yawn, we switch to Alfred, who outspeeds slacking and uses Growl to lower their attack, but they still take a solid bit of damage from Facade. We are then able to get off 2 Mud Slaps to drop their accuracy, but Alfred is still hit and dies to a 2nd Facade. We bring Tarkus back in and try to fish for attack boosts from Metal Claw and speed drops with Rock Tomb, but aren't having much luck. We temporarily bring out Lautrec to stop Tarkus from falling asleep, and you may notice Lautrec is awake now. They have the Natural Cure ability, which cures their status conditions upon switching out. Something I didn't notice and didn't realize they had, and would have made this whole fight a whole lot easier if I did and utilized it. Eventually, we get Slacking's HP low enough for us to begin using Dig, being untouchable in the turns they can attack, and striking when they can't. And you can see just how little damage Dig actually does, but eventually we take out Slacking, and a 2nd Slacking comes in. But this one is much easier. They know Focus Punch, which fails if they're hit while charging it up, and we can use the guaranteed hit from Shockwave to break their focus and use Metal Claw while they can't move, and we quickly beat the 2nd Slacking. All that's left is Vigoroth, and their Feint attack doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and it looks like Tarkus is going to easily beat them too, but then they score a critical hit. Not the end of the world, we still have a decent amount of HP, and oh, that's a 2nd critical hit, and Tarkus is dead. Well, we bring Mildred in. They handle a Facade well, and Flamethrower just misses the KO. One more and we should win. Oh, Vigoroth scored another critical hit, and Mildred is dead too. Hopefully they don't get another critical hit against Lucatiel. And they don't, and a Thunderbolt takes them down to win the fight. Well, after all those casualties, we are rewarded with the Surf HM, allowing us to cross to the other side of Route 118. But first, we hit up Mauville, where Watson gives us the key to his basement, and entering it, we're able to find Orbeck the Voltorb. We'll also briefly return to the Fiery Path to get the Toxic TM, which we'll be needing for the next gym. We cross Route 118, get the Good Rod, and fish up Olek the Magikarp. This is the last time you'll ever see them. Head up Route 119 where we get Hodrick the Oddish, and watch Hazel single-handedly kick Team Magma out of the Weather Institute. Right after is a May fight, but the only issue that arises from this is us sending out Lautrec first when she starts with a Nummel. But besides that, the fight is pretty much a walk in the park with no deaths. We head past Fortree City to Route 120 to get the Devon Scope, letting us remove invisible Kecleons from the overworld, allowing us to reach this body of water where we struggle to reel anything in because I refuse to turn off turbo mode, but we eventually reel in a Goldeen, who Lucatiel kills with a critical hit tackle. And just to prove it's Lucatiel's fault and not my own, we fish up a second Goldeen, and they survive the tackle just fine. Just ignore that they're 7 levels stronger than the first one. Anyways, we take on the 6th gym leader, Winona now. We start with Orbeck while she starts with the Swellow, who outspeeds us and uses Double Team, causing all of our Thunderbolts to miss until a critical hit brings us to just 4 HP before we finally land one of our Thunderbolts for the one-hit KO. Our Citrus Berry heals a lot of our HP, and Altaria comes in. We swap to Fiva on the incoming Earthquake, which we're immune to, and Altaria uses Dragon Dance to boost their attack and speed, and we hit them with a Toxic, badly poisoning them. They go on the offensive with a Dragon Breath, and we use Haze, removing their stat increases. We swap to Henri to hit them with a Dizzy Punch, but Altaria tries to set up again. So while they heal, it's back to Fiva to haze them after a Dragon Breath brings us low. Knowing toxic damage will KO this turn, we swap to Lucatiel, who is then hit by a critical hit Dragon Breath that also leaves them paralyzed. But our Citrus Berry heals us up a bit, and Winona brings in Pelipper next. We power through Paralysis to land a Thunderbolt for the one-hit KO, and all Winona has left is Skarmory, so we switch into Ellie to score the KO with some Flamethrowers to win us the fight. Shortly after the fight, we evolve O'Hara into a Vibrava, and catch Agdane the Duskull on Route 121. At the Safari Zone, we pick up Hawkwood the Natu, and in Mount Pyre, we find Yuria the Vulpix. While we're on the mountain, we watch Team Magma rob some elderly woman, so we break into their hideout to steal the Master Ball, which we immediately use to catch Scarlet the Spheal in the Shoal Cave. After that, we're going to take on the 7th gym leaders, Tate and Liza, in a double battle. Their only Pokemon are Solrak and Lunatone, while we bust out Henri and Cirrus. Henri hits Solrock with a Shadow Ball, and Lunatone hits Cirrus with a Hypnosis, stopping us from using Taunt on them. Solrock then sets up a Sunny Day, and we swap Cirrus out for Hawkwood. Henri lands another Shadow Ball, Solrock hits Hawkwood with a Flamethrower, and Lunatone uses Calm Mind to boost their special stats. Hawkwood's Citrus Berry heals them, and Tate heals his Solrock. Hawkwood hits Lunatone with a Confuse Ray, while Henri lands yet another Shadow Ball on Solrock, but Lunatone powers through Confusion to set up yet another Calm Mind. A combination of Shadow Ball and Nightshade takes out Solrock on the next turn, and a combination of Psychic and Lunatone not giving a damn about being confused takes out Henri as well. Cirrus is back in, and Lunatone just completely breaks at this point. They do not land another Psychic for the rest of the match. They are either too busy hurting themselves in confusion, being healed by Liza, setting up screens for when Cirrus wakes up, and immediately putting them back to sleep when they do wake up. Eventually, Hawkwood KOs them with a Nightshade to win us the fight. To celebrate our victory, we break into Steven's house where he gives us the Dive HM, which we teach to our HM homie, Scarlet. This lets us get to and through the seafloor cavern, where at the end is our final encounter with Team Magma's leader, Maxie. He starts with the Mighty Yenna, while we start with Hazel, who beats them with just a few surfs. Camerupt comes in, and just to play it safe, we swap to Agdane on a rock slide and then land a Confuse Ray while they use Amnesia. I then realize playing it safe was stupid, and we swap back to Hazel. Camerupt hurts themselves a Confusion, and a Surf leaves them with seemingly 1 HP, but Camerupt takes care of that themselves. All that's left is Crobat, and we simply swap to Orbeck to beat them with a couple Thunderbolts to win the fight. The final thing we have to do to wrap up the Team Magma story is to battle Groudon. We start with Orbeck, and bravely run away, causing Groudon to cease to exist. Easy. Right after that, we evolve Hodrick into a Gloom, and grab the Giga Drain TM in preparation for the final gym leader, Wallace. Because I refuse to turn off Turbo Mode, we have to be very careful doing his gym puzzle, lest we fall into his basement of ravenous MILFs. But we make it across and take on the leader. He starts with a Love Disc, and we start with Orbeck, who outspeeds them and lands a one-hit KO Thunderbolt. Whiscash comes in next, so we swap to Lautrec on an Earthquake. Giga Drain takes them out, and Celio comes in, survives a Giga Drain, and lands an Aurora Beam for solid damage. Wallace then heals Celio, allowing us to restore all of the HP we lost with the Giga Drain, and one more takes them out, and Melodic is in. They outspeed Lautrec and land a critical hit Ice Beam for the one-hit kill. Well, that's great. We send Orbeck in and use Light Screen before losing a fourth of our HP to an Ice Beam, and we then use Thunderbolt for decent damage, but also leaving Melodic paralyzed. We then get hit by a Water Pulse that confuses us, so we have to swap out. We bring out Hodrick, who begins landing Giga Drains for solid damage, restoring all the HP we lose from incoming Ice Beams. But then, as Wallace heals Melodic, Light Screen wears off, meaning Ice Beam will do more damage. Except Melodic never gets another chance to use Ice Beam, as Paralysis stops them from moving, allowing Hodrick to land 3 back-to-back Giga Drains to KO them before they can move. All they have left is Seaking, and we swap to Orbeck to land a Thunderbolt, but it doesn't KO, and we get confused, so to be on the safe side, we swap to Hazel to finish them with a Surf to win the fight. To leave the gym, we have to break the ice and fall into the MILF basement. Why is everything so white and slippery here? Please tell me this is snow. With all gyms beaten, we just need to make preparations to take on Victory Road. We refuse to evolve Belclair until they hit level 43 and learn Explosion, and only then allow them to become a Nuzleaf. We make our way through Victory Road, watch Cirrus get killed by a Meditite, catch said Meditite and name them Carhelion, and at the end of Victory Road is our final battle with Wally. He starts with an Altaria, and we start with Lucatiel, who scores a one-hit KO with an Ice Beam. Wally's own Delcatty comes in next, but Lucatiel proves to be top cat with a couple more Ice Beams. Magneton is up next, so we swap to Ellie and they get confused by a Supersonic. We try to power through and fail, so we decide to swap them out. We bring in Scarlet on a Tri-Attack that doesn't do much damage, then back to Ellie, who's immune to the incoming Thunderbolt. They tank a Tri-Attack before landing a Flamethrower for the KO, and Roselia comes in, misses their Toxic, and goes down to Flamethrower. All Wally has left is his Gardevoir, and they bring Ellie down to just 1 HP with Psychic before being hit by Earthquake, and we have to swap to Belclair as they heal. Gardevoir has no moves that can hurt Belclair, so we're free to hit them with a couple Facades to win the fight and earn the right to challenge the Elite Four. Normally, I set the level cap at the 4th Elite Four member's ace, but with such a weak team, I decided to give us some leeway and set the level cap a tiny bit higher. For our final team, we'll be going in with Lucatiel the Delcatty, Hazel the Tentacool, Agdane the Duskull, Carhillion the Meditite, Ellie the Numel, and Orbeck the Voltorb. We blow up Fiva and Belclair for luck, and we begin the Elite Four challenge. Starting with the Dark Trainer Sydney, we start with Carhillion, and he starts with a Mightyena whose Intimidate ability drops their attack, but Carhillion does not care, and 5 Brick Breaks later, we are moving on to the next challenge, Phoebe the Ghost Trainer. She starts with a Dusclops, and we start with Lucatiel. We move first and land a Thunderbolt to take out close to half their HP, and they retaliate with a Confuse Ray, but our Lumberry protects us for the turn. A second Thunderbolt leaves them paralyzed, and they can't move, but Phoebe heals them before we can take them out, and they survive long enough to land another Confuse Ray. We swap to Orbeck as Dusclops sets up a Future Sight, and a Thunderbolt takes them out. Her second Dusclops comes in, and expecting them to use Earthquake, we swap to Agdane, but they use Confuse Ray, and Agdane is hit by the Future Sight from a couple turns ago. We know a Shadow Ball is coming, and swap to Lucatiel, who's immune. We then land a Thunderbolt before getting hit by a Confuse Ray. Earthquake is coming this time for sure, so it's back to Agdane, but nope, they use Ice Beam. We swap between Lucatiel and Agdane, slowly chipping away their HP until eventually Lucatiel gets the opportunity to take them down with a Thunderbolt, and her first Bayonet comes in, only to go down to 2 Ice Beams. Her Sableye doesn't fare any better, and her last Bayonet brings Lucatiel into KO range with a Psychic, so we swap out to Orbeck, who finishes them off with a Thunderbolt to win the fight. The Ice Trainer Glacia is next, but just like Sydney, she falls victim to 5 Brick Breaks from Carhillion. Next up is the Dragon Trainer Drake. He starts with the Shelgon, and we start with Hazel, and our Ice Beam isn't strong enough for the one-hit KO, and they use Rock Tomb. Luckily, not dropping our speed. Drake wastes a full restore, but Shelgon still goes down before it can move again, and Flygon is in next. It also survives an Ice Beam and uses Dig, and we swap to Agdane, who's immune to said Dig. After we're hit by a Dragon Breath, we use Nightshade to take out Flygon, only for a second Flygon to come out. We swap to Hazel as they use Sand Attack, which doesn't affect them thanks to her Clear Body ability, and we land an Ice Beam that Flygon survives off of seemingly 1 HP before landing a Crunch, which we also survive. We use Surf to take them out, and Altaria is in. Our Ice Beam fails to KO, and they use Dragon Dance to increase their attack and speed, and Drake uses a full restore to heal, and we have to hope we either land a crit or freeze them with this Ice Beam if Hazel is to survive. Neither happens, and we go down to a takedown on the next turn. We bring out Agdane, who survives a Dragon Breath before avenging Hazel with a Nightshade, and all Drake has left is Salamence. We swap to Orbeck on a Crunch, that leaves them with 69 HP, nice, and we use a Light Screen, allowing us to survive the incoming Dragon Claw, and as much as I want to use Self-Destruct here, Thunderbolt is probably the smarter move. We do solid damage, and then Orbeck dies to a Dragon Claw. We bring in Agdane, who gets hit by a Flamethrower before burning Salamence with a Will-O-Wisp, and our Berry heals us, allowing Agdane to survive a Crunch and use Nightshade, leaving Salamence with little HP. Burn would KO, but Salamence heals with a Citrus Berry. we swap to Lucatiel, who has to survive back-to-back crunches and a Dragon Claw, before landing an Ice Beam for the KO. Finally, we're up against the champion Steven. He starts with the Skarmory, and we start with Ellie. We tank an Aerial Ace, and then our Flamethrower just misses the KO. Steven wastes a full restore, and then sets up a layer of spikes before going down to Flamethrower. Aggron comes in next, and we swap to Agdane on an Earthquake, which we're immune to. Aggron tries to use Dragon Claw, and we retaliate with a Will-O-Wisp to burn them, hurting their ability to damage us. We swap to Carhelion as Aggron uses Thunder and misses, allowing us to land a Brick Break for the KO, and our Maldo comes in next. Our Brick Break takes out over half their HP, but they then get killed by our Maldo's Aerial Ace. We send out Lucatiel to hit them with a Thunderbolt, just missing the KO, and we get hit by an Ancient Power, bringing us close to half HP. Luckily, our Cute Charm ability activates, giving our Maldo a 50-50 chance to not attack Lucatiel. Steven heals our Maldo, but isn't able to move again before Lucatiel takes them down. Claydol is out next, and they're able to set up a Reflect and land an Earthquake before going down to Ice Beam, and Steven decides to bring in his ace Metagross next. They outspeed Lucatiel and land a critical hit Meteor Mash for the KO right off the bat, and we send out Agdane next. We barely survive another Meteor Mash, this one boosting Metagross's attack, and we land a Will-O-Wisp to burn them. We try to use Rest, but Metagross uses Psychic, scoring another kill. All we have left is our weakened Ellie the Numel, and even with the burn lowering Metagross's attack, they're still too strong and they kill Ellie with an Earthquake, causing us to lose the fight and the run. Well, we came pretty close at the end. Maybe if the level cap matched Steven's Metagross, we would have had a better chance, or maybe we just needed a different strategy and better EV training from the start. Steven tends to give me a lot of trouble and ends my runs more than any other champion, so hopefully next time I play through Ruby, we'll get the win. I've been Hextasy, and thanks for watching.